Welcome to Quiet Story, a channel where you're allowed to slow down, where the past is not loud nor dramatic, but comfortably dull. The perfect place to rest your eyes and drift off. Tonight's tale begins at the edge of a sleepy village, a forgotten corner of a muddied world, a crooked inn waits just ahead. Its sign sways, its windows flicker, and its stew has likely been simmering since yesterday. As always, if you're somehow still awake at the end, leave a sleepy comment and tell us what you imagine might be floating in that stew. But now, let's take the final few steps and quietly head inside. You've been walking all afternoon. The sun dipped below the hills before you even noticed. Your cloak has grown heavier with each breath of damp village air, and your boots, once dry, now squelch faintly with each step. You've passed empty fields, stone walls choked with moss, and barns so slanted they seem to lean into the wind just to stay upright. The road is less road now, and more suggestion. Mud tracks, bent grasses, a rut where cartwheels passed, weeks ago, maybe. You round a slow bend and finally see it. A squat, uneven building that leans just slightly to one side. Built not with symmetry in mind, but with whatever timber the woods were willing to give up. The roof is thatch, patched with darker thatch, and somewhere near the chimney, a very wet bird is huddling in resignation. A sign swings above the door. It doesn't creak rhythmically. It creaks in long, moaning intervals, as if the wood itself is remembering something unpleasant. The image carved into the hanging board is worn and softened by decades of rain. A tankard, maybe, or a potato, possibly both. There's no need for names here. It's the tavern, the only one. You approach slowly, your breath now visible in the cold. A curl of smoke escapes from the chimney. A faint orange glow seeps around the edges of the shutters. There's life in there, or at least warmth. You reach the door, thick wood, dark with time and wet fingers. The handle is iron and cold. You press it gently and step inside. The warmth hits you all at once. A dull, embracing heat from the hearth and the bodies. Layers of smells you can't separate: scorched grain, sour ale, herbs, tallow candles, old onions, wool, and time itself. The air is smoky, but not choking. Just gently fogged with the daily breathing of the building. You blink to adjust. The tavern is lit with rushlights and stubby candles, little waxy islands flickering inside pewter holders or wedged into gaps in the wall. The shadows dance lazily across low beams and uneven stone. The ceiling seems to press down in some places and lift in others, like a sagging tent of wood. The floor is questionable. Something between boards and earth, covered in trodden straw, crushed herbs, a few chicken feathers, and the occasional dark smear. You try not to look too closely. No one pays you much attention. The regulars glance up briefly, a man with too many teeth missing to smile properly, a hunched woman darning a sock under candlelight, and a boy sleeping upright in a chair, his head bobbing like a drowsy goose. Somewhere in the corner, a dog groans softly and shifts. It doesn't lift its head. It's seen too many arrivals to care. You make your way to a bench along a long table, more of a plank, really, laid over thick legs carved with meaningless patterns. The bench creaks but doesn't protest. You sit. A moment later, a figure appears. The innkeeper. Her apron is patched with flour, ash, and something suspiciously purple. Her hair is bound back with a length of string. Her face is weathered, but not unfriendly. She places a tankard in front of you and says nothing, only waits. You fumble a few coins from your pouch and slide them forward. She nods once. Approval. The tankard contains something warm, cloudy, brown. It tastes faintly of apples, but with the sourness of age. There's a bit of something floating in it. Best not to disturb it. She returns moments later with a bowl. Wooden. Heavy. Slightly cracked. Inside, a stew. Maybe. A thick mass of grayish something. Parsnip, perhaps. Lentils. Turnip. Some kind of meat, probably. There's steam. It smells of root vegetables and patience. You eat slowly. It's hot. That's all that matters. The tavern murmurs on. A lute plays in the background, out of tune, barely audible. A man across the room tells a story with too many hand gestures. His companions pretend to listen, nodding only when he pauses. A cat walks across the beams above your head, carefully, as if it owns the place. And it might. A gust of wind brushes the shutters. Rain begins. You hear it patter against the thatch like someone drumming with soft fingers. The warmth deepens. Your eyes begin to blur around the edges. The fire crackles. The candles dim. No one moves quickly here. No one shouts. No one seems interested in doing anything they don't absolutely have to. You lean back slightly, your tankard half full beside you, your bowl mostly empty. And you breathe. You're not a knight. Not a lord. You're not a thief or a hero or a bard. You're just a person. Tired. Cold. And finally, somewhere soft to sit. No one asks your name. No one asks where you came from. And best of all, no one expects you to go anywhere. Not tonight. Here, in the soft flicker of tallow and soot, with the smell of boiled roots and aged wood in your nose, and a warm belly full of stew and whatever that drink was, you feel a slow, comfortable sleepiness begin to settle in your bones. You are here. You are warm. And now, you may rest. The floor is made of what? Rushes, rats, and spilled ale. You glance down. Not quickly. Just a slow, tired tilt of the head. A long blink. Because you've been sitting for a while now, and the food is still warming your belly. The ale is settling in. The fire is whispering nearby. And everything feels just heavy enough to keep you still. But yes, you glance down. And it takes a moment to understand what you're seeing. Because the floor beneath your boots is not a floor in the modern sense. Not polished. Not level. Not even clean in any hopeful way. It's more like a soft, lumpy suggestion of a surface. A shifting patchwork of old planks, beaten earth, straw, and, well, other things. The rushes. Ah, yes. The famous medieval rushes. They cover most of the floor, strewn loosely, a deliberate kind of mess. Not fresh, not fragrant. Not even all the same plant. Mostly dry grasses. Some herbs. Bits of hay. Some are flattened into the ground by countless boots. Some still try to stand upright. But together they form a kind of rustic carpet, one that's never washed, just occasionally replaced. Or, more often, simply added to. You shift your foot slightly, and the rushes rustle, brittle and papery, like dead leaves in autumn. They were meant to help, you recall. To soak up spills. To mask smells. To offer a bit of softness between feet and dirt. And once, maybe long ago, they did. Some were even mixed with lavender, thyme, mint. Sweet-smelling plants, laid down with good intentions. But now they're simply there. Doing their job quietly. Collecting history in thin layers. Year after year. Spill after spill. And speaking of spills, you notice, just to the left of your boot, a dark patch of something sticky. Perhaps ale. Perhaps gravy. Perhaps something with a more alarming origin. It's dried now, mostly. Hardened into a crust under the rushes. The kind of thing that's no longer questioned, just stepped around. A few feet away, a small cluster of crumbs, scattered and mashed, marks the spot where someone dropped half a loaf. Or perhaps fed it to the dog under the bench. Or perhaps... No. Better not to think about it too much. Because now, something moves. Not quickly. Not threateningly. Just shifts. Silently. A flicker in the corner of your eye. And there it is. A rat. Small, quiet, disinterested. It noses at the crumbs, whisks its tail, then disappears beneath the bench with the kind of efficiency only a tavern rat possesses. Not the city kind, bold and brazen, but the old, rural, time-worn type. Tavern rats know the rules. Stay out of the firelight. Keep close to the shadows. Take only what's left. Never squeak unless absolutely necessary. You listen for a moment. But there's no more movement. The room remains calm. The other patrons do not react. This is nothing new to them. This is background life. The slow ecosystem of tavern floors. Above the rushes, in the few places where timber planks poke through, the wood is stained. Black in some places, gray in others. Smooth from centuries of boots and spills and scraping chairs. A few nails stick up at odd angles, hammered flat again and again. The grain of the wood is nearly worn away, replaced by the polish of time. You tap your heel gently, and it makes a dull thud. Solid enough. But it gives just slightly under your weight. Everything here breathes a little. You realize, too, that the rushes have a scent. Faint but present. A mix of dry hay, spilled beer, ashes, and something greener. Old time, maybe. Or wild chervil. Something sharp beneath the dust. It's not unpleasant. Just textured. You shift again on the bench, and beneath your feet, something crunches. A small bone, possibly. Chicken? Rat? The kind of discovery best left unconfirmed. Somewhere in the room, someone sneezes into their sleeve. Another spoon clinks softly in a wooden bowl. And then, the quiet. The soft, full-bodied quiet of a room with no urgency. Just warmth. Low ceilings. Dim light. And a floor that never judges you for what you've stepped in. You glance again at the doorway where you first entered. You remember the way your boots felt when you crossed the threshold, heavy, caked in mud. But now they are half clean. Or rather, redistributed. Some mud taken, some crumbs given. The tavern floor accepts all. In one corner, a hound stirs in its sleep, letting out a low grunt and shifting a paw. Dust and hay rise slightly around it, then settle. A single rush stem drifts lazily through the air before landing silently on the stained wood. Time moves here in slow, forgetful loops. There is no need to clean the floor. The floor is not for show. The floor is simply there, old, soft, living. A memory beneath your feet. You shift once more. Take another sip of that warm, sour drink. And then you lower your gaze back to the rushes. The herbs. The crumbs. The places where firelight fades. And you realize, this is the kind of floor that remembers things long after the people have gone. And tonight, it will remember you, too. Who's who at the table, locals, strangers, and suspicious monks. You're not alone at the table. You've known this for a while, of course. From the first moment you sat down, the creak of the bench, the hum of voices, the occasional clink of a spoon, you could feel the presence of others. But it wasn't until now, once your stomach is settled and the floor has become just part of the background, that you truly begin to notice them. You lift your eyes slowly, without urgency. You take in the space, not all at once, but in soft pieces, like unwrapping an old blanket corner by corner. And here they are. The usual crowd. the kind that grows from the very wood of the place. The ones who would still be here if the building were swept away in a flood, sitting calmly on floating timbers, mugs in hand, continuing their slow, murky conversations about weather and cattle and the price of turnips 4 villages over. The man to your left, or perhaps more accurately, the man leaning against the table with one arm and half a shoulder, seems to have been born in that exact pose. His tunic is stiff with old stains. His hair is the color of ashes and fried fat. His nose bends oddly to one side, not broken recently, but long enough ago that it has chosen a new permanent angle. He stares at his mug like it once told him a secret, and he's hoping it might repeat it. He is, without question, a local. Across from you, a woman sharpens a knife with exaggerated care. Not a weapon, not quite, but a long, curved blade meant for gutting fish, slicing herbs, or possibly encouraging better behavior from a neighbor. Her sleeves are rolled up. Her hands are strong, her eyes half-lidded with boredom. She hasn't spoken since you arrived, but every so often, she looks at the door, as if expecting someone, or hoping they never arrive. To your right, at the far end of the bench, is a younger man with hair too neat for this place. Not neat in a noble sense, but deliberate. Recently washed, recently arranged. His boots are cleaner than yours. His hands don't bear the dark smudges of labor. He fiddles with the lacing of his doublet while scanning the room with the eyes of someone waiting for something to happen. He's not from here. Not yet. He's the kind who wants to be noticed, but only for the right reasons. His coin purse is tied twice. His smile is rehearsed. His drink remains untouched. Behind him, in the shadows, a stranger sleeps sitting upright. Hood drawn. Boots dry. You can't see their face. You don't ask. You hear the door creak again, but you don't turn. Doors creak often here. Some open. Some close. Most simply breathe in the wind and shift back into place. And then there's the monk. He's sitting at a table by the hearth, just a little too close to the heat, like he wants people to notice his tolerance. His robe is brown, thickly woven, slightly too clean for the room. His sandals rest atop a cloth he's placed beneath them, to protect them from the floor, perhaps, or to avoid contact with what the floor has become. He holds a book. But he's not reading. He's watching. Not obviously. Not rudely. Just enough to make it known that he knows more than you do. That he's seen things. That he once ate something in a monastery that still troubles him. His eyes are slow, deliberate, and when they pass over you, it feels not like being seen, but noted. He has no ale. Just a cup of hot something. Perhaps wine, perhaps water, perhaps the tears of penance. You don't ask. The tavern seems to breathe again. A gust of wind, or just the crackling of the fire, brings a moment of movement. Mugs lifted, spoons stirred, someone coughing into a cloak. You settle a little deeper into your bench. From the far end of the room, 2 old men laugh. One has no teeth, the other no memory of the punchline. They laugh anyway. The sound is soft and slow, like logs splitting under their own weight. A girl, too young to serve, too old to sit still, carries a tray of bowls across the room, each step practiced, each swerve around puddles and elbows honed by necessity. She doesn't speak either. Her hair is tied with twine. Her hands are red from dishwater and cold. Behind the bar, or rather, the wide plank with a keg and some jugs, the innkeeper wipes her hands on a cloth that's already absorbed a year's worth of tavern life. Her expression is unreadable. She is, as always, exactly as present as she needs to be, no more, no less. You notice, too, the dog under the table, not your table, but one nearby. It shifts, scratches, grunts, and stares out with eyes half-lidded in judgment. It may be the oldest creature in the building, possibly the wisest. You try to avoid making eye contact. The young man with the neat hair finally lifts his mug and sniffs. He doesn't sip, just sighs. The woman with the knife cuts a slice of something from a loaf of bread so hard it sounds like splintering wood. The monk, still watching, finally turns a page. Slowly. Loudly. Nothing is written on it. You're almost sure of that. You begin to wonder, who here was once like you, a stranger in from the cold, looking for stew and silence? Who never left? Who forgot where they were going? And who, perhaps, never really belonged anywhere to begin with? But it's a slow sort of wondering. A gentle fog of curiosity, too heavy to rise into concern. You sip the last of your drink, or most of it, and place the mug back on the table with the reverence of someone who has no plans to move for quite some time. The warmth remains. The company, if not friendly, is at least familiar. No one asks your name. No one offers theirs. But in the shared breathing of the room, in the steam of the stew and the dust on the rushes, in the soft murmur of distant talk and the occasional glance from a suspicious monk, you begin to understand. You are not quite one of them. But for tonight, you're not quite a stranger either. Ale, mead, and terrible wine, what everyone was drinking. You take a sip. It's cloudy warm. And oddly fizzy. Not sparkling, exactly. Just active. As if it were still thinking. As if the drink itself hadn't quite finished becoming what it was supposed to be. There's a tang to it, sharp and slightly sour, like overripe apples left in the sun too long. But it's not unpleasant. Not entirely. You hold the mug in both hands now. The heat from the fire has warmed the earthenware, and that warmth passes slowly through your palms. The rim is chipped in 3 places, worn smooth by countless lips, each tasting something slightly different. This is ale. Or something like it. And in this tavern, in most medieval taverns, it is the drink of choice. Not because it is the best, but because it is the most reasonable, the most reliable, the safest. Water is dangerous. You know this. Everyone knows this. Streams carry waste, wells hide secrets, and barrels left standing too long become homes for things that wriggle. So ale. Brewed, boiled, bubbled into something that will not kill you. Probably. It's weak. Low in alcohol. More nourishment than intoxication. Made with barley, sometimes oats, occasionally wheat. Hopped, if someone thought to do so. Or not. Brewed thick and murky in someone's cottage, by hands that don't record recipes, only remember gestures. The result is what's in your mug, slightly different every time, always vaguely familiar. You take another sip. This one's stronger. Or maybe your tongue is adjusting. It leaves a bit of grit on the back of your teeth. A memory of the grain. At the next table over, someone lifts a wooden cup with both hands. Mead. Now there's a drink with a story. Honey wine. Sweet, thick, golden if you're lucky, cloudy brown if you're not. Made from honey and water and thyme. Sometimes herbs, sometimes fruit. Sometimes nothing but what the bees gave and what the cask allowed. It's more expensive. It takes longer to make. It's a drink of festivals and moments that deserve remembering. But it finds its way into taverns now and then. Often in small cups, hoarded by those with coin or charm or a friend who brews it in secret. The man drinking it now sways slightly. Not from drunkenness, but from reverence. He treats it like a gift. Or a prayer. And then there is wine. Ah. Yes. The wine. It exists. That's the kindest thing that can be said of it. The innkeeper pours a cup for a merchant in a red cloak. The liquid sloshes unevenly. It is pale and thin and carries a scent that is troubling. Something between vinegar and pond water. Not aged, not chilled, not particularly clean. But fermented. Definitely fermented. The merchant drinks with a grimace. He is used to better, clearly. But he is also tired, and this is what's available. So he drinks, and accepts, and dreams of vineyards far away. Wine here is rare. Not because no one wants it, but because it doesn't travel well. Unless it's spiced, or boiled, or cut with something else entirely. In many places, what's called wine is more a potion, made drinkable by the generous addition of honey, cinnamon, cloves, pepper, even ashes. There are recipes. None of them sound like something you'd serve with dinner. But still, people drink it. Because it is wine. And wine is supposed to mean something. You look back at your ale. You're not sure if it's getting better or if your expectations are lowering. But it feels right. It fits the room. It fits your hands. It fits this hour of flickering firelight and soft voices. There is no rush to finish it. No ceremony. Just slow, steady sips between thoughts. Behind the bar, more mugs are being filled. Some with cider, sharp and bubbly from half-rotten apples. Some with perry, if pears were plentiful. Some with braggot, if someone got clever and mixed honey with ale. And some with drinks that have no name. Made of what was available. Brewed in pots never washed properly. Passed from hand to hand like a secret too strange to write down. Someone nearby raises their mug in a quiet toast. Not to anything specific. Just a raised brow, a nod, and a sip. You return it with a soft smile and lift your own mug in reply. In this room, drink is not escape. It's rhythm. It's custom. It's conversation without words. You let the ale sit on your tongue. Try to guess the grain. Was it barley? Rye? Whatever was left in the sack at the end of the month? It doesn't matter. It's warm now. And it's yours. For as long as the mug stays full. And when it's empty, well, maybe you'll try the mead. Or maybe not the wine. The fire crackles. The mugs thump gently to the table. And the room hums with that slow, steady peace that comes from being full. Of food, of drink, of company not entirely unpleasant. You take another sip, and another. And soon, you forget what it tasted like at the start. But it doesn't matter. Because now, it simply is. The stew is always on, questionable meats and eternal broths. You smell it before you see it. A heavy, humid warmth in the air. Damp. Salty. Almost sweet. It clings to your clothes the moment you step into the tavern, winding its way into your sleeves and the folds of your cloak. You try not to breathe too deeply, but it finds your nose anyway. It always does. This is the scent of the stew. It is not the scent of a stew. No. Not one made this morning. Not one dreamed up by a cook with a recipe in hand and a mind for flavors. This is the stew, older than memory, older perhaps than the inn itself. Bubbling in the same blackened pot, over the same hearth, for longer than anyone here would dare to guess. The stew never ends. It is replenished, not remade. Refreshed, never discarded. A handful of carrots here, a bone from yesterday's roast there. Bits of onion, wilted cabbage, half a leek, a small fish, a potato with more eyes than skin. What one patron leaves uneaten may become part of tomorrow's broth. What slips from a platter on the way to the table might find its way into the pot before it cools. The pot itself is a fixture, massive, iron, scorched black with soot and time. Suspended just above the glowing coals, it murmurs to itself day and night. A soft, living burble. Not boiling, not quite. Just always cooking. Always watching. You approach your bowl slowly. Steam rises in spirals. It fogs your eyes for a moment, blurring the room into shadows and light. When it clears, your stew awaits you. Murky. Earth-toned. Suspicious. Familiar. You grip the spoon, thick, carved wood, slightly sticky, and stir once, carefully. There are chunks, but they defy identification. Soft-edged things. Mushy vegetable ghosts. And something stringy that could be meat, or could be something that tried to become meat, long ago. A shred of something floats lazily near the edge. It may have been part of a duck, or a rat, or a goat, or a creature no one would dare name out loud. And yet your stomach growls, because you're hungry. And this, whatever this is warm. And warm is worth more than answers. You bring the spoon to your lips. It's hot. So hot it burns a little. But you hold it there. You breathe in through your nose. And then, bravely, you taste. The first flavor is salt. Sharp and flat. Then a rush of something earthy, a turnip perhaps, or something trying very hard to be one. Then a hint of meat. Old meat. Not rotten, but experienced. Seasoned by repetition. It doesn't taste like beef. Or chicken. It tastes like stew. Like all stews combined into one. You chew. You swallow. You wait. And nothing bad happens. Which, in this place and this time, is considered a triumph. Around you, others are eating too. Quietly. Methodically. With the resigned grace of people who know what they're getting, even if they don't know exactly what they're getting. At the far end of the table, a man lifts something from his bowl with his fingers. A knucklebone, maybe. He studies it briefly, shrugs, and sets it aside. He keeps eating. No questions asked? Behind him, a young boy digs out a bit of barley and examines it like treasure. He gives it to his sister. She smiles. The stew gives what it has. Some days it's rich. Full of unexpected generosity, thick slices of carrot, tender bits of rabbit, the savory essence of marrow melted into every drop. Other days, it's thin and gray. Broth with dreams of meat. But still warm. Still enough. You take another bite. This time, it tastes different. Now you get a bit of garlic. Or something like it. The flavor is sharp, a welcome surprise. You chase it with a hunk of bread, yesterday's, maybe the day before's. It's hard, but the stew softens it. Makes it feel like food again. You sit back. The room hums with quiet life. Mugs clink. Fire pops. Someone sighs. The air is thick with wood smoke, ale, and this one long, slow-cooked smell that seeps into everything. You realize the stew is not just a meal here. It's the center of gravity. The pot never moves. People come and go, seasons change, but the pot remains. The stew remains. Like a hearth with a pulse. Like a soup that remembers you. They say some stews carry history in them. That if you stir deep enough, you'll find stories. Bones from a wedding feast. Turnips from a winter famine. A feather from a hen that no one could catch, until one day, it simply walked into the kitchen and sat itself in the pot. Your bowl is nearly empty. You scrape the bottom with your spoon. It resists. Something thick and dark is gathered there. The stew's oldest thoughts, perhaps. You hesitate, then taste it. It's strong. Too strong. You drink a little ale to chase it. Then you smile. Because this, in some strange way, is what you came for. Not a dish. A ritual. A link to everyone who ever sat where you sit now. All of them warmed by the same steam. all of them fed by the same unending bowl. And tomorrow? The pot will still be on. It always is. The innkeeper's wrath. Rules you'd better not break. The innkeeper is not just a person. She is the living, breathing heart of the tavern, the iron fist wrapped in a weathered leather glove, and the ultimate lawmaker of this noisy, smoky little world. You might have heard stories about her before you even stepped inside. Whispers from passing travelers, warnings muttered by the regulars. Don't cross her, they say. She runs this place like a warship. One wrong word, and you'll be ducking for cover. As you step through the heavy wooden door, the warmth of the fire hits your face, but your eyes are immediately drawn to the woman who stands behind the bar. Her hair is pulled back so tightly that not a single strand dares escape, and her sharp eyes scan the room with a vigilance that suggests she's not just watching you, she's watching everything. She carries herself like a captain on deck during a storm, ready to bark orders and whip her crew into shape at a moment's notice. The way she moves through the tavern is purposeful and steady, with no wasted motion. Every step is measured, every glance deliberate. You quickly realize this place runs on rules. Unwritten rules, perhaps, but as firm and real as the wooden beams overhead. And she is the enforcer of every one of them. First, there's the rule about ale, the lifeblood of the tavern. No one argues about whose turn it is to buy the next round. To break this rule is to invite a glare so cold it could freeze your very soul. The innkeeper keeps a keen eye on the mugs, the empty ones, the full ones, and the ones just being raised. She knows who owes whom, who's honest, and who's trying to sneak a sip without paying. Next, there's the rule about seating. There's always a bench reserved for the village elder, a spot that's never to be claimed by anyone else, no matter how many friends they drag in. If you dare to sit there, expect a polite but unmistakable eviction from the innkeeper herself. Then there's the fire, the heart of the tavern's warmth. It must never go out. If you're caught letting the fire die, you'll owe a tankard to every patron who had to suffer the cold until it's rekindled. This isn't just tradition, it's survival. No one wants to be freezing in a stone building at night, especially after a long day of hard labor. But the most famous of all her weapons isn't her sharp tongue or stern gaze. It's her wooden ladle. This ladle has a reputation that echoes louder than the clatter of mugs or the hum of chatter. It's been described in many ways: a judge's gavel, a sword disguised as kitchenware, the hammer of justice. When tempers flare, and someone forgets their manners, the ladle is raised. A gentle tap to the shoulder, a sharp rap on a knuckle. Or sometimes, in moments of extreme chaos, it flies through the air with surprising speed and precision. You've heard stories from old-timers about the ladle's power. How it has quelled fights before they started. How it has turned the mood from fury to laughter with one well-placed thwack. How even the toughest brawlers know to keep their heads down when the innkeeper's ladle is in hand. You watch as a burly miner accidentally knocks over his mug, spilling ale across the wooden floor. The innkeeper's eyes narrow. She moves swiftly, ladle in hand, approaching the miner. Before he can mutter an apology, she taps him on the back of the head with the ladle, a sound like a wooden drum. The miner grins sheepishly, mutters, "Sorry, my lady," and reaches for his mug again. Order is restored. You realize quickly that it's better to laugh along, pay your debts promptly, and never question her authority. The innkeeper is fair, but she has no patience for fools. She's seen everything: the drunken brawls that break out over a misheard insult, the quiet sobbing in the corner after a hard day, the shared jokes that bring strangers together, the moments of silence when a loved one has just left on a journey. Through it all, she is the quiet backbone of the tavern, the steady hand on the wheel, steering the ship through every storm. Tonight, she's in good spirits. You see her nodding at a group of miners who have just entered, their faces still smudged with soot, their helmets tossed aside. They laugh loudly, raising their mugs in salute. She nods back, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. But you can tell, beneath that smile, her vigilance never wavers. You settle into your seat, grateful to be on her good side tonight. Because you know, one wrong move, one spilled ale, one forgotten rule, and the ladle will make its presence known. And everyone will remember exactly who runs this tavern. Music and mayhem. The tavern minstrel plays his lute badly. As you step through the heavy, creaking door of the tavern, a familiar sound wraps around you like an old, somewhat frayed blanket. The unmistakable twang of a lute being strummed with enthusiastic but questionable skill. The minstrel is in full swing, sitting near the hearth where the fire crackles and throws flickering shadows on his worn face and the battered wood of his instrument. This man, a permanent fixture in the tavern's chaotic ecosystem, seems to live and breathe music, or at least attempts to. He's lanky, with sunken cheeks and bright eyes that gleam with a mixture of passion and obliviousness to the actual quality of his performance. His clothes are patched and faded, and a crooked feather droops from his threadbare hat, as if it's weary from years of accompanying his endless performances. He plays the same song, the very same 3 chords and verses, over and over. It's almost hypnotic, the relentless repetition weaving through the hum of chatter, clinking mugs, and crackling fire. At first, it's slightly grating. The notes occasionally wobble out of tune, his voice cracks on high pitches, and his rhythm sometimes stumbles. But as the minutes tick by, the tune starts to feel strangely comforting, like a repetitive chant or a lullaby meant to calm a restless mind. Around him, the tavern patrons have grown accustomed to the ritual. Some tap their feet, others nod in time, and many attempt to sing along quietly, their voices soft and hesitant, not quite sure if they're joining in or just trying to drown out the discord. A few patrons exchange amused glances, knowing the song by heart, their smiles tinged with fond exasperation. Between his rounds of music, the minstrel entertains with rambling stories. These tales are a patchwork of historical battles, lost loves, and heroic deeds, sometimes factual, often exaggerated, and occasionally completely nonsensical. His storytelling meanders like the river outside in springtime, unpredictable and winding, with moments of clarity followed by long detours into forgetfulness or confusion. The children gather close, their eyes wide with fascination and amusement. When the minstrel accidentally plucks a string that sounds like a crow cawing or a dying bird, they erupt into giggles. They cheer with unrestrained joy at the end of every verse, no matter how off-key or out of sync. For them, it's not about perfect music, it's about the magic of being part of something, of the sound that fills the room and warms the heart. Occasionally, the innkeeper herself approaches the minstrel, a mixture of fondness and mild irritation on her face. She reminds him softly to keep the volume down during the village elder's rest, but she never truly silences him. After all, his music is part of the tavern's very soul, imperfect, yes, but vital. You notice how the repeated melody begins to stitch the crowd together. Strangers lean closer, conversations pause for just a moment, and laughter bubbles up in unexpected places. The song becomes a shared experience, a communal thread that ties the varied stories of the tavern's patrons into a single tapestry. The minstrel's persistence is almost heroic. Despite the missed notes, the cracked voice, and the endless repetition, he never falters. Each chord, each verse, is played with heartfelt determination. It's as if through this one song, he captures the essence of the tavern, its chaos, its warmth, its stubborn heart. As you sit and listen, the tune lodges itself into your memory. It's not beautiful in the traditional sense. It's rough, uneven, and sometimes downright painful to the ear. But it's alive, vibrant, and somehow exactly right for this place. When you finally leave the tavern, stepping back into the cool night air, the melody still echoes in your mind. You find yourself humming softly, the repetitive notes offering an odd sort of comfort. A reminder that even in the midst of imperfection and noise, there's a rhythm to life that connects us all. Sleeping in the common room, hope you brought a blanket. The night has deepened, and the lively chatter and laughter that filled the tavern earlier have begun to fade like the last embers in the hearth. Yet the common room remains far from quiet. It's a bustling refuge for weary travelers, villagers, and anyone lucky enough to find shelter. You glance around with a hopeful heart, searching for an empty bed. But as your eyes scan the cramped room, the truth settles in like a cold draft through a cracked window. There are no beds left. Not one. Every plank of straw-stuffed mattress, every rolled-up blanket, every nook and corner has already been claimed. With a resigned sigh, you prepare for a different kind of rest, the kind that requires curling up on the cold, hard floor. You choose a corner that looks just barely less drafty than the others, pulling your cloak tighter around you. Your back presses against the rough wooden wall, splintery and uneven, but it's a barrier of sorts, a faint shield against the chill that seeps in. The floor beneath you is layered with rushes, dried reeds that long ago had been scattered across the tavern's earthen floor. They soften the hardness of the planks somewhat, but not nearly enough to call it comfortable. Still, it's better than nothing. You stretch out as best you can, folding your arms beneath your head and closing your eyes. But the common room is alive with sounds, the low rumble of voices winding down, the occasional clink of a mug set carefully on the wooden table, and, most challenging of all, the symphony of snores. Snoring fills the room in waves and pitches. The large, burly blacksmith in the corner lets out a deep, vibrating snort that seems to shake the very rafters. Beside him, a group of rowdy fishermen take turns snoring in discordant harmony, one nasal and wheezy, the other sharp and sudden, like a startled animal. You try to tune it all out, to focus on your own breathing, slow and steady, but the cacophony presses in. Each snore is a reminder that you are not alone, that the tavern's warmth is shared with dozens of other restless souls. Your cloak is threadbare and offers little real warmth, and you curse yourself for not bringing a proper blanket or bedroll. You can hear others shifting around you, the scrape of wooden stools dragged across the floor, the soft rustle of clothing, the quiet murmur of late whispers exchanged between companions trying to find their own peace. Despite the discomfort, there's a certain charm in this shared experience. This is how people have rested for centuries, huddled close together, body heat mingling, in a place that smells of smoke, spilled ale, and worn leather. Outside, the wind howls against the tavern's walls, but inside, the fire's glow fights back the cold. It casts long, dancing shadows across the room, where tired faces briefly appear in the flickering light before melting back into the darkness. You feel the weight of the day, the journey, the hunger, the strange new faces, pressing on your eyelids. Slowly, the snoring shifts from an annoyance to a steady background hum, like waves on a distant shore. In this imperfect shelter, surrounded by strangers and the sounds of a hard-lived life, sleep finally begins to claim you. You drift between moments of rest and alertness, dreams weaving in and out of the raucous tavern noise. Though you had hoped for a proper bed, this common room, with its cold floor and chorus of snores, becomes a temporary sanctuary. You learn to find comfort not in luxury, but in the company of others, in the shared warmth, the stories told earlier in the evening, and the simple, unspoken camaraderie of surviving another long night. When morning light finally filters through the small, grimy window panes, you awaken stiff and sore but somehow grateful for the refuge. The tavern's bustle slowly resumes, voices rising and mugs clanking, as a new day begins. You rise, stretch, and prepare to face the world again, carrying with you the memory of this strange, noisy, imperfect night, and a newfound respect for those who call the tavern their nightly home. Dice, cards, and cheating peasants, games of the tavern. The tavern's common room hums with life. Fires crackle in the hearths, mugs clink, and voices rise and fall in a chorus of laughter, argument, and song. But if you edge closer to one of the scarred wooden tables tucked into a dim corner, you'll find another world. One ruled by chance, cunning, and a thin line between friendship and rivalry. This is the arena of tavern games, where peasants, tradesmen, and travelers gather to test their luck and skill. Dice roll, cards shuffle, and the tension thickens like the stale smoke in the air. It's a place where fortunes can be made or lost with a flick of the wrist, and where tempers flare as easily as mugs are emptied. You watch as a small crowd gathers around the rough-hewn table. Their faces are flushed from the warmth of the fire and the effects of too much ale. Their clothes are worn but clean, patched in places where work and life have taken their toll. Hands calloused from labor now tremble slightly with anticipation or frustration. The game is simple, but the stakes feel weighty. A few copper coins, a hunk of bread, or the right to boast among friends until the next day's work. The dice, made from bone or carved wood, clatter across the tabletop, their bounce sending tiny puffs of dust into the firelit air. The cards are crude, painted with fading symbols, their edges rounded from years of shuffling and handling. One man, broad-shouldered and ruddy-faced, leans forward, a sly grin tugging at his lips. He's no stranger to these games. His fingers move with practiced stealth, slipping a card beneath the table when no one is watching. His eyes dart around, watching for suspicion, but his act is slick, almost charming. Across from him, a wiry fellow with a sharp jaw and narrowed eyes watches intently. He suspects foul play but can't quite catch the cheater in the act. "You're marking the dice," he accuses, voice low but sharp enough to draw attention. The broad-shouldered man laughs, a deep, rumbling sound. "You're just bitter you're losing." His grin widens, but a flicker of unease passes over his face. Other players murmur, some nodding in agreement, others shaking their heads. The game continues, the dice rolling and cards shifting, each turn a test of luck and guile. Suddenly, a loud shout breaks the rhythm. "Cheater!" one player yells, slamming a fist on the table so hard that mugs wobble and spill ale. The tension snaps like a drawn bowstring. Voices rise. Accusations fly, and the air thickens with heated words. Then, with a crash that silences the room, the table is upended. Coins, dice, and cards scatter across the floor, mingling with spilled ale and sawdust. The players stand, chests heaving, faces flushed with a mix of anger and adrenaline. But moments later, the anger gives way to laughter, rough, hearty, and familiar. This is their ritual, a messy dance of trust and betrayal played out in the flickering tavern light. The innkeeper steps forward, her voice sharp and commanding. "Enough of this nonsense," she declares, eyes flashing as she glares at the disputants. "This is a place for drink and rest, not for turning over tables." Grumbling, the players settle down. The spilled coins are gathered, the dice retrieved, and a new game begins. This time, eyes are sharper, hands steadier, and the stakes lower. You watch all this with a mix of amusement and fascination. The games are chaotic, imperfect, but they bring life to the tavern long after the songs fade and the fire dies low. Through the dice's unpredictable dance and the cards' shuffled secrets, you glimpse the human need for chance, challenge, and connection. The games are more than mere pastime. They are a vital thread in the tavern's living tapestry, a shared story told with laughter, anger, and fleeting triumph. As the night deepens, the games continue. Roll, cheat, argue, laugh, and repeat, a timeless rhythm that echoes in the worn wood and smoky air. binding everyone in a rough but enduring camaraderie. Tavern gossip, what everyone's whispering about. You push open the heavy oak door of the tavern and step inside. The warmth of the fire hits you like a wave, chasing away the biting cold of the evening air. The tavern is alive with murmurs, half-hidden conversations, and the occasional burst of laughter that quickly subsides into cautious silence. Smoke from the hearth lingers thick in the air, curling around rough-hewn beams and stained wooden tables. The smell of stale ale, wood smoke, and roasted meat fills your nostrils. But beneath this familiar tavern aroma, there's another scent, the unmistakable flavor of secrets and whispers, of stories spun and spread like wildfire. You move deeper into the common room, and as you do, you catch snippets of hushed voices. Everyone here seems to be leaning in, eager to share or catch the latest rumor. The tavern, it seems, is not just a place for drink and rest. It's the village's living web of information, a place where truth and fiction mingle in equal measure. Near the fire, a woman in a threadbare cloak leans forward, voice low and urgent. "Did you hear? The knight was seen last night at the crossroads." Her eyes flash in the firelight. "They say he rode in under a black banner, silent as the grave. His armor was stained red, fresh blood, no doubt." A burly farmer with a thick beard snorts, wiping foam from his mug. "A knight here? Out of place and time. What business would he have on these back roads? And no banner means he's no herald of any lord. But the black banner means war," insists a wiry man, who has been quietly listening. "A sign of doom. Maybe a rogue knight, or a spy. Someone who rides for no king." The woman nods solemnly. "They say his sword carries a curse. That anyone who crosses his path is doomed to a terrible fate." Nearby, a group of young men chuckle nervously over their mugs. "Sounds like a ghost story for children," one says. But even he glances nervously toward the door, as if expecting that cursed knight to ride in at any moment. In another corner, a different kind of gossip unfolds. A pair of farmers exchange hushed words about an odd occurrence on a nearby farm. "Old Martha's piglet," one whispers. "Born with two heads, they say. A terrible sign. Twice the trouble, twice the curse," replies the other, eyes wide. "My grandfather said such things meant the land itself was angry, that the harvest would fail and sickness would follow." The talk grows darker, spreading like shadow tendrils to other listeners. Whispers about strange lights in the woods, about a cloaked stranger who disappeared without a trace after a night of heavy drinking, and rumors of ghosts haunting the riverbank. As you listen, the stories unfold not just as idle talk, but as a way for these villagers to grapple with their fears and hopes. Life here is hard and uncertain. A sudden bad harvest, a failed birth, or a traveler's shadow can mean ruin. So they weave these tales, mixing truth and imagination, to give meaning to the unknown. The tavern is the village's beating heart. Here, news travels faster than the king's messengers, and every whispered secret has a life of its own. It's a place where people come together, sharing stories that bind them in their common struggles and dreams. You watch a young woman laugh quietly, sharing a tale about a ghostly figure seen near the chapel. Another man rolls his eyes, dismissing it as superstition, but even he listens closely. The stories are a comfort, a distraction from the daily grind, a thread that links the living with the past and the unseen. The night deepens. The fire burns lower, casting longer shadows, and the murmurs slow to a gentle hum. Outside, the wind howls against the tavern walls, but inside, the warmth of the fire and the glow of shared stories keep the cold and dark at bay. You lean back, feeling the strange peace that comes from being part of something bigger, a community bound together by whispered tales, by laughter and fear, by hope and doubt. Here, in this smoky room filled with whispers, you find a fleeting escape from the harshness of medieval life. And as the last embers flicker, the gossip continues, endless, ever-changing, alive, a timeless dance of human connection that will carry on long after the ale is gone and the fire burns out. The smoke never leaves. Why everything smelled like fire. As you step into the tavern, the first thing that hits you is the smoke. It clings to your skin, seeps into your clothes, and nestles deep in your hair. No matter how long you stay, the smell never truly leaves. It's a dense, unyielding blend of burnt wood, smoldering embers, and the sharp tang of roasted onions and meat, a scent that becomes as familiar as your own breath. The hearth is the heart of the tavern, a roaring fire that never goes out. Its flames dance and flicker, casting a warm, golden glow over rough wooden beams and scarred tables. But with the fire comes smoke, thick, swirling clouds that drift lazily upward, weaving through every nook and cranny of the old building. The tavern's walls, blackened with soot from years of burning wood and straw, tell stories of countless nights like this. Here, fire is both a comfort and a curse. It provides warmth against the cold winds that howl outside, cooks the food that sustains you, and lights the dark hours of night. Yet it also fills the air with an ever-present haze, a smoky veil that never quite lifts. You notice how the smoke settles in everything, the wooden floorboards, the heavy woolen tapestries, even the mugs from which you drink. Patrons cough quietly, hands waving in front of their faces, but no one complains. This is simply the way it is. Smoke is as much a part of the tavern as the laughter, the ale, and the worn faces around you. Outside, the world is cold and gray, but inside the tavern, the fire's glow offers a fragile sanctuary. You watch as the innkeeper stokes the flames with a practiced hand, sending sparks flying like tiny stars into the smoky air. She moves quickly, accustomed to the constant battle against the creeping ash and smoke that threaten to choke the room. The smell of burnt wood is mingled with the aroma of roasting onions, garlic, and whatever cuts of meat have been thrown onto the spit. These scents blend into the smoke, creating a rich, pungent perfume that clings to your senses long after you leave. You find yourself almost comforted by it, a reminder that life here is rough, but real. Your clothes, once fresh and clean, now carry the unmistakable odor of smoke and fire. The fabric feels heavier, as if soaked in the tavern's smoky soul. It will take days, maybe weeks, for the smell to fade, if it ever truly does. You accept this as part of the experience, a mark of belonging to this harsh, smoky world. The smoke also changes the light. The flames cast a flickering, orange haze that blurs the edges of faces and objects, giving everything a dreamlike quality. Shadows stretch and twist, and you find yourself drawn into the hypnotic dance of firelight and smoke. It's a world both beautiful and dangerous, filled with secrets hiding just beyond the veil. Even the sounds are softened and muffled by the smoke. The crackling of the fire, the murmur of voices, the scrape of wooden stools against the floor, all seem wrapped in a smoky cocoon. It's as if the tavern exists in its own timeless bubble, separate from the harsh realities of the outside world. You realize that this smoky atmosphere has shaped the very character of the tavern. It's a place where stories are told, deals are struck, and friendships are forged in the glow of the hearth. The smoke is a constant companion, a silent witness to the joys and sorrows that unfold within these walls. And yet, despite the discomfort it causes, the coughing fits, the itchy eyes, the persistent odor, no one dreams of a smoke-free tavern. The smoke is a part of their lives, a reminder of warmth in the bitter cold, of light in the dark. It's a small price to pay for the comfort and camaraderie found here. As you settle deeper into the wooden bench, you breathe in the thick, smoky air once more. It's rough and harsh, but it's home. And no matter how many times you leave, the smoke will follow, woven into your clothes, your hair, your very being. A lingering scent of fire, and of life itself in the medieval tavern. The outhouse is out back, if you're lucky. The tavern is warm, noisy, and crowded, but eventually, nature's call becomes impossible to ignore. You rise from your wooden bench, stiff from hours spent huddled over a mug of ale, and prepare yourself for a journey almost as perilous as any quest, the walk to the outhouse. You grab a flickering candle from the common table, its tiny flame trembling as you hold it carefully to keep the wax from dripping on your fingers. The tavern's main room is a chaotic blur of laughter, shouting, and clinking mugs, but just beyond the back door lies a different world, cold, dark, and uncertain. Stepping outside, you're immediately hit by the sharp chill of night air. The warmth of the fire is left behind like a fading dream. Your breath forms little clouds as you exhale, and the uneven cobblestone path beneath your feet is slick with mud and scattered with stray bits of straw and animal droppings. The candle's weak light barely pierces the darkness. Shadows loom like silent sentinels among the crooked trees and leaning fences that border the tavern's yard. You squint, trying to spot the outhouse, a small, wobbly wooden hut that leans precariously to one side, its door hanging slightly askew. Each step is tentative. The ground is uneven, and a misplaced foot could send you tumbling into the muddy earth or worse, into the outhouse itself. A sudden rustle in the bushes nearby makes your heart leap. Perhaps a rat, or some other nocturnal creature disturbed by your intrusion. The cold bites at your face and hands. You pull your cloak tighter, wishing you had brought thicker gloves or a sturdier lantern. The candle flickers dangerously in the breeze, casting eerie shapes that seem to dance just out of reach. You remind yourself to breathe slowly, to stay calm. It's only a short walk, after all. As you near the outhouse, a foul stench rises on the air, confirming what you already feared. This humble wooden structure is far from the comforts of a modern bathroom. The door creaks loudly as you push it open, revealing a cramped, dimly lit space with rough wooden walls stained dark by time and neglect. Inside, the seat is little more than a crude wooden plank with a hole cut in it, positioned above a deep pit. You settle down quickly, eager to finish your business before the cold drives you back out. Every sound, the creaking of the wood, the whisper of wind through the cracks, the occasional drip of water from the roof, seems magnified in the silence. Your candle sputters and almost dies, and you frantically cup your hand around the flame, willing it to stay alive just a little longer. Outside, you hear the distant barking of a dog and the faint murmur of voices from the tavern, but in this moment, you are alone with the night, the smell, and the chill. When you finally emerge, blinking against the cold air, you feel a mixture of relief and mild disgust. The outhouse may be necessary, but it is far from pleasant. Your shoes crunch on the frozen mud as you hurry back toward the tavern, eager to reclaim the warmth and noise inside. As you step back through the door, the bustle and laughter envelop you once again, washing away the chill and the unpleasant memories. You shake the cold from your bones and blow on your fingers, grateful to be back among the firelight and friendly faces. You glance down at your candle, now nearly spent, and remind yourself, if you're lucky, the outhouse is out back. But if you're not, well, there are worse fates than a short, chilly walk in the dark with questionable footing. This simple journey, repeated countless times by tavern-goers over the centuries, is a small but vivid reminder of how different life was in medieval times, where even answering nature's call could be an adventure fraught with discomfort, danger, and a healthy dose of humor. Stray dogs, roaming cats, and that one goat inside. As you push open the heavy, creaking tavern door once again, a familiar and chaotic symphony greets you, the barking and growling of scruffy stray dogs, the insistent meows and stealthy purrs of roaming cats, and unmistakably, the persistent, slightly nasal bleating of that one infamous goat. Yes, that stubborn, unpredictable goat that somehow has made the Smoky Tavern its kingdom. The animals in and around the tavern are as much a part of its daily rhythm as the clinking of mugs or the crackle of the hearth fire. Outside, the yard is a wild arena where a motley pack of dogs roam freely, their fur matted and dirty from the mud and straw that cover the ground. Their noses twitch as they sniff for food scraps, their eyes sharp and ever watchful. They are survivors, scavengers who have learned to live alongside humans, benefiting from spilled ale, dropped meat, and the warm shelter the tavern yard offers. The dogs weave expertly through the throng of muddy boots, overturned barrels, and discarded bones, barking occasionally at one another in territorial disputes or signaling the arrival of a newcomer. Their voices form a low, constant hum of animal life that blends seamlessly with the human chatter inside. Stepping back inside, the contrast is immediate. Here, the cats reign. They are sleek, cunning hunters, their matted fur and flicking tails betraying a life lived both in comfort and constant alertness. They slink beneath tables and slip between the legs of patrons, all with a predatory grace. Their yellow eyes gleam in the firelight as they scan for an opportunity, a scrap of bread left unattended, or the sudden scurry of a mouse across the floor. These cats are the unsung heroes of the tavern, keeping the vermin population in check and thus preserving what little food remains in this smoky den. Their presence is tolerated, even welcomed, by the innkeeper, who knows full well that without them the rats would overrun the place, gnawing at barrels and stealing what little grain is stored in the rafters. Then there is the goat. That unruly, audacious goat. Short-legged but sharp-eyed, with a scruffy coat mottled with mud and hay, it moves through the tavern like it owns the place, which, in many ways, it does. You catch it sniffing at the wooden floorboards, nudging overturned stools, and occasionally sticking its head into a patron's lap, demanding attention or perhaps a morsel of food. The innkeeper tolerates the goat with a mixture of affectionate exasperation and grudging respect. "That blasted beast!" she grumbles as she swats it away from the counter where it was attempting to sample the morning's bread. "More trouble than all my regulars put together, and twice as stubborn." Yet despite its mischief, the goat is a beloved character, a living mascot who embodies the chaotic spirit of the tavern itself. You watch a group of weather-beaten farmers laugh as they toss scraps of stale bread to the goat, which eagerly gobbles them up before darting off and knocking over a half-full mug of ale with its horn. The ale spills onto the floor, eliciting a chorus of groans and good-natured laughter. A brawny man pats the goat's head and says, "You're a right little rascal, aren't you?" The goat bleats in reply, as if agreeing with the compliment. Meanwhile, a large tabby cat leaps nimbly onto a windowsill, tail flicking with satisfaction as it surveys the room like a tiny, imperious monarch. Its gaze sweeps over the patrons, appraising their drunken antics with detached amusement. You can't help but feel that these animals, the dogs, cats, and goat, understand the true order of the tavern better than any of its human guests. Outside, the dogs gather beneath a gnarled oak tree, barking and howling in a raucous chorus that echoes across the village, a wild, untamed sound that reminds you how close this place still is to the wilderness beyond. Their presence offers a strange kind of security, alerting the tavern's inhabitants to any approaching dangers or strangers in the night. The animals, chaotic though they may be, serve vital roles in this smoky, crowded world. The cats keep the vermin at bay, protecting precious food supplies. The dogs provide companionship and a rough form of protection, warning of threats unseen to the human eye. And the goat. Well, the goat reminds everyone to never take life too seriously, injecting chaos and laughter in equal measure. The tavern itself becomes a microcosm of the larger medieval world, noisy, unpredictable, and full of life's messy realities. The animals add depth, color, and texture to the smoky, dimly lit room, making it feel alive and breathing, a place where stories unfold amid paw prints and hoof beats. As you settle back onto your bench, the goat ambles over and bumps your knee with its nose, its bright, curious eyes locking onto yours. For a fleeting moment, you swear the goat understands you, or at least enjoys being the center of attention. You reach out a hand to scratch behind its ears, and it bleats softly, a small sound of approval that echoes in the warm, smoky air. In this chaotic realm of firelight, spilled ale, and raucous laughter, the stray dogs, prowling cats, and that one clever goat are more than mere animals. They are part of the tavern's very soul, wild spirits bound to this smoky refuge where friendships are forged, secrets are whispered, and life, in all its messy glory, goes on. As the fire crackles and the night deepens, you find comfort in the familiar sounds of paws patting on wooden floors, hooves clattering against stone, and the constant hum of life in the medieval tavern. In this smoky, lively den, you are reminded that you are never truly alone, not while the animals roam and the stories flow like ale from the tap. When nobles visit, class divide and awkward silence. The tavern's usual raucous symphony, the laughter, the clinking of mugs, the boisterous stories, the occasional shouted insult, comes to an abrupt halt as the heavy oak door swings open once more. Heads snap up, conversations die mid-sentence, and an almost tangible tension ripples through the smoky air. The reason is unmistakable: nobles have arrived. Dressed in finely embroidered tunics and velvet cloaks, their boots clean and polished, their manner refined and deliberate, these visitors belong to a world apart. Their arrival is like an unwelcome breeze cutting through the warm, familiar chaos of the common room. You notice how the innkeeper's usual sharp tongue softens, replaced by a careful, respectful tone. The rowdy farmers and laborers straighten their backs as if someone just handed them an invisible rod of authority. Even the stray animals, dogs and cats alike, seem to sense the change in mood, settling down with lowered heads and quiet patience. Everyone sits straighter, drinks quieter, and tries desperately not to spill anything. The once lively tavern is hushed, as if someone has cast a spell of politeness and restraint. The laughter is replaced by cautious whispers, and the clatter of mugs becomes almost a whisper. The nobles choose a corner of the room, far from the hearth where the common folk cluster. Their table is carefully arranged, polished wooden cups instead of the usual rough clay mugs, delicate plates of imported cheeses and fruits, and a decanter of clear wine rather than the cloudy ale that fills the rest of the room. You watch as a young noblewoman, her dress shimmering with intricate embroidery, glances around the tavern with a mixture of curiosity and distaste. Her nose is just barely wrinkled, but the look in her eyes speaks volumes. This place is dirty, noisy, and beneath her in every way. Across from her, a lord with a finely trimmed beard sips his wine slowly, his gaze sharp as he surveys the crowd. You can feel the weight of his eyes on you, the silent reminder that this smoky, raucous tavern is not his usual haunt. The divide between classes is as clear as the difference between their wine and the ale you've been drinking. It's a gulf built on centuries of tradition and hierarchy, where the noble's polished world meets the rough and tumble reality of peasants and tradesmen. You hear a murmur from the crowd, half resentment, half nervous excitement. Some of the farmers steal glances at the nobles, their expressions a mix of envy, suspicion, and reluctant admiration. Others lower their eyes, mindful of the unspoken rules that say the lower classes must not meet the gaze of their betters. The nobles speak in low, measured tones, discussing matters of land, politics, and taxes, the very things that shape the lives of the common folk who listen. Their words carry a heavy weight, but the commoners can only nod along silently, knowing that their own struggles remain unheard or dismissed beyond these walls. At one point, the young noblewoman rises, her skirts swishing softly as she moves through the tavern. She passes close by your table, her eyes briefly meeting yours. For a moment, you feel the full weight of the class divide, an invisible wall that separates two worlds under one roof. The innkeeper approaches the nobles with practiced grace, serving their wine and attending to their needs with a mixture of deference and efficiency. You catch a glimpse of her eyes flickering toward the commoners, a silent apology for the disruption. Despite the noble's presence, life in the tavern must go on. The games continue in quieter corners, the fires crackle in the hearth, and the stray animals find places to curl up out of sight. The tension slowly dissipates, but the memory of the noble's visit lingers like the scent of expensive perfume in the smoky air. You realize that this brief visit is a reminder of the delicate balance between two worlds, one of privilege and power, the other of grit and survival. And though they share the same space for a time, the gulf between them remains wide and unbridgeable. As the nobles finally rise to leave, the tavern exhales. The clatter and laughter return, louder now, as if to reclaim the space that was momentarily claimed by silence. The animals stir once more, the stray dogs bark, and the cats stretch and purr, reclaiming their kingdom alongside the common folk. You take a long sip of your ale, the taste suddenly bitter in your mouth, and wonder what it would be like to live on the other side of that invisible wall, in a world of velvet cloaks and polished boots. But for now you are here, in this smoky, lively tavern where the common people gather, and where life goes on, messy and loud and real. Tavern brawls, what starts them and who ends them? The tavern is no stranger to conflict. In fact, the clamor, laughter, and raucous cheer often mask a simmering tension, a pressure cooker waiting for the slightest spark to explode. And it doesn't take much, a spilled drink, a careless glance, or sometimes nothing at all except pure, restless boredom. As you settle onto a creaky wooden bench, the atmosphere shifts subtly. The air thickens with anticipation. Eyes narrow, muscles tense, and a low murmur of discontent ripples through the crowd. Somewhere near the hearth, a burly man's elbow nudges another's mug, sending a warm splash of ale onto the table. Silence falls for a heartbeat. Then, the sharp crack of a voice cuts through the room. "Watch it, you clumsy oaf!" A sneer follows. And suddenly a pair of fists slam onto the table. It begins. Tavern brawls in this smoky den are as old as the fire itself. They erupt quickly and unpredictably, fueled by heat, drink, pride, and sometimes nothing more than sheer frustration with the world. The brawls are less about cause and more about release, an outlet for the daily grind of hard labor, poverty, and endless survival. You watch as two men rise, their faces flushed with anger and ale. One shouts an insult, the other retorts with a shove. Chairs scrape backward, and the tavern's usual soundtrack turns to chaos. The sharp clang of overturned mugs, the thud of fists against flesh, the roar of the crowd egging on the combatants. The fight sprawls quickly, pulling in others like a whirlpool. Friends rush to defend one another, strangers pick sides, and soon the entire common room is a battlefield. The stray dogs outside bark in response, as if joining the fray, while the cats hide under tables, watching the madness unfold from safety. Amidst the shouting and crashing, the innkeeper emerges. She is a force of nature, small but fierce, with eyes like flint and a voice that commands instant attention. With a heavy wooden ladle in hand, she strides into the middle of the melee like a general entering a battlefield. "Enough!" she bellows, her voice booming over the din. The room freezes, breath caught in throats, fists hanging mid-swing. The innkeeper's gaze sweeps over the combatants. No one dares meet it. She is the undisputed ruler here, and her word is law. With a few swift motions, she separates the fighters, ordering some to sit and cool off, while others are threatened with expulsion, or worse. The innkeeper knows every regular by name, every grudge by history, and every simmering feud that might ignite. She balances on a knife's edge, maintaining order in a place built on chaos. Her reputation alone keeps many from pushing too far. The aftermath of a tavern brawl is a scene of destruction: overturned benches, shattered mugs, spilled ale soaking into the floorboards, and bruised egos. But it's also a strange kind of camaraderie, the rough and tumble brotherhood of those who've stood toe-to-toe and lived to tell the tale. You see old men nursing black eyes with grim smiles, young lads boasting loudly of their victories, and a few sheepish apologies offered over the remnants of broken food. The innkeeper moves through the mess, sweeping up and muttering curses under her breath, already preparing for the next eruption. As the night wears on, the tavern settles back into its usual rhythm. The fire crackles, the ale flows, and stories of the latest brawl become fodder for new laughter and warnings. You realize that these fights, while violent and messy, are as much a part of tavern life as the music, the games, and the gossip. They are moments where the pressures of a harsh medieval world are released in a burst of raw emotion, a violent dance that binds this smoky, crowded room together in ways polite conversation never could. And no matter how wild the fight gets, the innkeeper always wins. Midnight quiet. What happens when the crowd thins out? The night has deepened, and the tavern's usual clamorous spirit slowly dissolves into a softer, more fragile calm. The heavy oak door, which slammed open and shut so often earlier, now creaks only a few times as tired travelers and villagers shuffle out into the chill air, wrapped in threadbare cloaks, their faces dim with exhaustion. One by one, the once lively crowd thins until only a handful remain, the last embers of the evening's life flickering low like the dying fire in the hearth. Inside, the once chaotic common room is a vastly different place now. The deafening roars of laughter, the crashing of overturned mugs, the loud bickering and boisterous singing, all have faded away, replaced by a quietness that feels almost sacred after hours of raucous energy. Chairs scrape softly on the uneven, worn floorboards as those who remain settle into their corners, speaking in hushed tones or simply gazing into the warm glow of the fire. The hearth crackles gently, its amber flames casting flickering shadows that dance across the rough stone walls and soot-blackened timber beams overhead. The rich smell of burning oak mixes with faint traces of spilled ale, damp straw, and the lingering aroma of yesterday's stew, weaving an earthy perfume that is strangely comforting. You inhale deeply and feel a rare sense of peace settle over your shoulders. You notice the way the tavern seems to breathe in this moment, the slow rhythm of quiet sighs, the faint shifting of bodies in their seats, the gentle scrape of a stool as someone shifts to get more comfortable. Outside, the wind rustles the leaves and whistles through the thatched roof. But inside, you are wrapped in a cocoon of warmth and calm. Near the hearth, an old man sits alone. His hands rest on a worn wooden staff, his eyes half-lidded in the flickering firelight. His rough-spun cloak is pulled tight around his shoulders, and his face, weathered and creased like a well-read map, carries the weight of many years spent in this hard, uneven world. Suddenly, from somewhere deep within him, a soft hum begins, almost too low to hear at first, but steadily growing in warmth and clarity. It's a slow, simple tune, a melody you might have heard in dreams or from whispered tales passed down through generations. The notes ripple through the quiet room like a gentle breeze, wrapping around the last scattered souls who remain. The hum is comforting, like the lullaby of the earth itself. You find your breathing slowing to match its rhythm, your thoughts drifting as the melody weaves a delicate thread of peace through the smoky air. The old man's voice is cracked but steady, full of a bittersweet nostalgia that seems to touch the very walls and floor of the tavern. The stray cat that had disappeared during the rowdy hours earlier now slinks from the shadows, padding softly to curl up beside the hearth. Its rhythmic purring blends perfectly with the crackling fire and the old man's song. You watch as the cat's eyes close, a gentle sigh escaping its whiskered face, fully at ease in this fleeting sanctuary. Around you, The atmosphere hums with quiet intimacy. The innkeeper, having made her final rounds, sits by the fire with a worn mug, gazing into the flames as if seeking answers in their flicker. Her usual sharp, commanding presence softens in the late hours. Fatigue and a rare vulnerability tint her gaze. You think of all the lives that have passed through this tavern, farmers coming off the fields, merchants escaping the road's dangers, weary soldiers, and wandering minstrels. All have sought shelter here, and all have found moments like this, where the noise dies down and the world's harshness feels momentarily less sharp. The tavern, in this midnight quiet, reveals its true heart, not the chaos or the brawls, but the fragile sanctuary it provides. A place where the heat of the fire pushes back the cold, where strangers find common ground in shared silence, and where the past and present intertwine in the soft glow of fading embers. You close your eyes briefly and listen to the fire's whisper, the cat's purr, the old man's fading melody. It's a sound that will stay with you long after you leave this smoky room, a reminder that even in the hardest times, there are moments of peace to be found. The night stretches on slowly, each minute dripping like thick honey. Outside, the moon traces silver paths on the thatched roof, and somewhere far off, an owl calls into the darkness. But here, inside the tavern's warm embrace, time seems to fold gently in on itself, inviting rest, reflection, and the quiet hope of a new dawn. You let out a soft sigh, feeling the weight of the day lift just a little, and you realize that, for all its grime and noise, this old tavern holds a magic that no noble hall or polished chamber ever could. Waking up hungover in medieval times. The dawn breaks slowly, the first pale rays of sun filtering weakly through the narrow, grime-coated window of the common room. You stir beneath the rough woolen blanket, your body heavy and sluggish, as if weighed down by invisible chains. Your head pounds like the beat of a relentless drum, the pain pulsing in time with every throb of your tired heart. Your mouth feels like a swamp, dry, bitter, and coated with a thick film that tastes oddly like boiled cabbage and old leather. Swallowing is a chore, the back of your throat raw and unpleasant, as though you've been chewing on a handful of charred leaves overnight. You remember bits and pieces of the night before, the dim, smoky haze of the tavern, the rough laughter bouncing off the stone walls, the countless mugs of ale and mead drained with reckless abandon. There was the minstrel, the flickering firelight, the games of dice that ended in angry shouts, the sudden brawl you barely escaped. Yes, this is tradition, waking up to the aching aftermath of a medieval night spent in the smoky glow of the tavern. The price paid for the fleeting warmth, camaraderie, and forgetting. As you sit up, the room sways slightly, a reminder that your balance is far from steady. Your head aches with a relentless dullness, and the faint ringing in your ears is punctuated by the distant crowing of a rooster outside. You're surrounded by the remnants of the night, overturned benches, scattered straw, a broken tankard leaking dark, sour-smelling ale onto the dirt floor. The scent of stale smoke and fermented barley lingers heavily in the air, clinging stubbornly to your clothes and skin. Your fingers feel sticky, and you realize your hands are smudged with dirt and spilled drink. Outside, the morning chill bites through the cracked windows, reminding you that the cold is no less cruel at daybreak. Somewhere nearby, another soul stirs, perhaps the innkeeper already preparing breakfast, or a fellow traveler nursing their own headache in silence. The tavern slowly awakens from its slumber, a place that never truly sleeps but shifts from rowdy revelry to quiet recovery. You reach for a small wooden bowl on the table and take a tentative sip of lukewarm water. It does little to soothe your parched throat, but it is something. You remember the old wives' remedies whispered in the tavern corners. A spoonful of honey, a piece of black bread soaked in vinegar, or a strong cup of weak ale to settle the stomach. Not much help for the pounding hammer in your skull, but it's tradition nonetheless. Despite the discomfort, you find a grim sort of comfort in this shared experience. Every peasant, merchant, knight, or lord who crossed these creaking tavern doors has faced mornings like this, a brutal but familiar reckoning after nights of indulgence. It is a painful price paid for warmth, drink, and fleeting joy in a harsh world. You stretch stiff limbs and try to shake off the lingering fog in your mind. The day ahead will be long and unforgiving, chores to be done, roads to be traveled, debts to be paid. But for now, you sit still in the quiet light, letting the aching dull slightly, and remembering that tomorrow's troubles will come soon enough. This hungover morning, with all its misery and ritual, is part of the rhythm of life here, a reminder that in a world without modern comforts or medicine, people endured, laughed, drank, and woke up to do it all over again. Morning in the tavern, smoldering ashes and weak ale. The first hesitant glow of dawn seeps through the grimy, soot-darkened windows of the tavern, barely piercing the thick haze that still clings to every corner of the room. Outside, the world is waking, but inside this smoky den of laughter and chaos, the air hangs heavy with the dense smell of smoldering embers, spilled ale, and old bread left too long near the fading fire. You rub your weary eyes, still blurred from the effects of last night's revelry. The floor beneath you, covered in a patchwork of crushed rushes and stale straw, is cold and stiff. The faint crunch of straw beneath your fingertips reminds you just how long the night has lasted, or perhaps how long you've been here, stuck in this fog of exhaustion and lingering sense. The hearth, once roaring and warm, now lies quiet except for the dull red glow of smoldering ashes, faint wisps of smoke still curling into the chilly morning air. A layer of gray ash blankets the stones, scattered with half-burnt logs and stray bits of kindling. Every so often, a tiny spark flickers and dies out, like the last embers of the night's fading passion. The air itself seems to carry the memory of last night, the thick smoke from the firewood. Mingled with the sharp bite of burnt onions and cabbage from the kitchen, the sweet, fermented tang of spilled mead, and the unmistakable, pungent odor of unwashed bodies and wet wool. You can almost taste the residue in the air, a bitter mixture of warmth and decay. Moving slowly, you notice the remnants of the evening's chaos all around you. Tables, sticky with spilled ale and smeared with bits of crusty bread, are pushed askew. Stools lie overturned, their legs broken or splintered. Bits of torn parchment, probably from a hastily abandoned game or a drunken note, litter the floor along with crushed pieweed and scraps of dried meat. The walls, blackened by years of smoke, seem to absorb the dim morning light, making the room feel smaller and more claustrophobic. Thick wooden beams, dark and heavy, span the ceiling, supporting a roof that has sheltered countless generations of travelers, peasants, and townsfolk, all seeking refuge from the cold and the hardships of the outside world. From the back room, the sound of movement breaks the heavy silence. The innkeeper, a stout woman with a sharp eye and hands hardened from years of work, steps out. Her face is stern but tired, marked with soot and streaked with the sweat of last night's toil. She carries a bucket of cold water, which she carefully pours over the smoldering ashes to fully extinguish the fire, sending up a final hiss and a plume of steam. With practiced motions, she begins her morning routine, sweeping the floor with a rough broom, scraping stubborn stains from the wood, and stacking the scattered chairs. Her movements are efficient and sure, the silent authority of someone who runs this place like a ship navigating stormy seas. Other early risers begin to stir from their makeshift beds, travelers sprawled on rush-strewn pallets, merchants rubbing sleep from their eyes, and the occasional village local, all wincing at the harsh morning light and the lingering aches from a night of too much drink or too little sleep. You hear the soft murmur of whispered conversations, hushed thanks, and the occasional grumble as they brace themselves for the day ahead. The smell of weak ale, watery, pale, and far removed from the heady brews of night, is passed around. This thin, almost tasteless drink is the first step to waking, a tradition that helps settle queasy stomachs and dull the sharper edge of hangovers. Outside the tavern, the village is coming to life. You hear the clatter of wooden wheels on cobblestone, the distant barking of dogs, and the steady rhythm of footsteps. Roosters crow, merchants call out their wares, and the scent of fresh bread baking in a nearby oven drifts through the cool morning air. Despite the rough conditions, the tavern offers a refuge, a place to recover, to share news and stories, and to prepare for the unrelenting demands of the day. The fire will soon be rekindled, the kitchen fires stoked, and the tavern's rough but hearty breakfast prepared. Soon, the smell of porridge, salted pork, and fresh bread will mingle with the lingering smoke, promising a small comfort after the harshness of the night. As you sit quietly, sipping your thin ale, you realize the tavern is more than just a place to drink and sleep. It is the heartbeat of the community, a place where lives intersect, and stories unfold in the smoke and shadows. And so the morning drags on, slow, smoky, and tinged with the bittersweet taste of yesterday's pleasures fading into today's sober reality. A tavern's place in the village, more than just booze. You push open the heavy wooden door, its iron hinges creaking in protest, and step inside the tavern. The thick haze of smoke mingles with the rich smells of roasting meats, spilled ale, and damp woolen cloaks. This place isn't just a tavern, it's the throbbing heart of the village, where every thread of daily life is woven into a tapestry of noise, celebration, conflict, and community. From dawn until well after midnight, the tavern is alive with activity far beyond the clinking of mugs. Weddings, rowdy, boisterous, and utterly unforgettable, are held here. The bride's hair, hastily braided with wildflowers, bobs as she dances with her new husband beneath strings of flickering candles. The fiddler plays a lively tune, and villagers stamp their feet on the earthen floor, raising clouds of dust that shimmer in the smoky air. Children dart between tables, their laughter ringing out as tankards are raised in sloppy toasts, and the innkeeper, eyes sharp but smile faint, keeps the ever-present eye on the proceedings, ready to quell any trouble before it starts. Deals are made in hushed tones around worn wooden tables, scarred with knife marks and water stains. Farmers argue over the price of grain, merchants haggle for barrels of salted fish, and village elders exchange quiet words about land disputes and alliances. Coins clink onto tables as agreements are reached, and the murmur of bargaining mixes with the occasional bark of laughter or the scratch of a quill on parchment. The tavern functions as the marketplace's unofficial back room, where fortunes can be won or lost on a whispered word. But the tavern is not just a place of celebration and commerce. It is also a crucible for tension and conflict. A spilled drink, a careless insult, or a glance held too long between strangers can ignite tempers faster than the flames in the hearth. Fights break out with a suddenness that leaves mugs shattering and chairs splintering. The sound of fists hitting flesh, grunts of pain, and curses shouted in thick accents filled the room. Yet amid this chaos, a strange order prevails. The innkeeper, wielding her authority like a seasoned captain, steps in with a wooden ladle or a sharp word to restore peace. Often, the village's strongest men, brawny farmers or burly blacksmiths, intervene to break up the scuffles, maintaining a brutal but effective justice. By dawn, the tavern bears the scars of the night's violence, but peace, fragile and temporary, returns with the morning light. Music threads through the tavern like a living thing. Minstrels strum their lutes and sing ballads of heroes long gone, or bawdy tavern songs filled with humor and innuendo. Villagers join in, their voices rising in drunken harmony or playful rivalry. The music brings people together, creating moments of joy and shared humanity amid hardship and uncertainty. Every song tells a story, every note carries a memory, and the tunes echo in the minds of those who listen long after the last chorus fades. News, gossip, and rumors find their way into every corner of the tavern. A traveler's tale of distant lands, whispered secrets about the Lord's tax hikes, or the latest scandal involving the village priest, all spread quickly, passed from mouth to ear like a slow-burning fire. The tavern is the village's unofficial news hub, a place where information flows as freely as the ale. It is here that the villagers' fears, hopes, and suspicions are shared and shaped, creating a collective narrative that binds them together. Beyond the noise and chaos, the tavern serves a vital social role. It is a refuge from the harshness of medieval life, a place where the cold can be forgotten by the warmth of the hearth, and loneliness chased away by the company of others. The walls of the tavern, blackened by smoke and lined with rough wooden beams, have witnessed generations of human drama, births and deaths, promises made and broken, friendships forged and lost. As you sit here now, amid the chatter and clatter, you feel the pulse of the village, raw, imperfect, and alive. The tavern is more than just a place to drink. It is a living, breathing heart of community life. Here, in the smoke-filled room, under the flickering candlelight, life unfolds in all its messy, beautiful complexity. So take a slow sip of your ale, listen to the stories swirling around you, and let yourself be carried away by the timeless rhythms of the medieval tavern. The traveling storyteller and the one-eyed liar. The tavern door swings open with a sudden creak, and two figures step inside, drawing the attention of every patron. One is a slender man with a battered lute slung across his back, a wide-brimmed hat shadowing his eyes but unable to hide the spark of mischief in his smile. The other is a stockier fellow, one eye hidden beneath a rough leather patch, the other gleaming sharp with a practiced cunning that suggests a lifetime spent weaving tales, and perhaps bending the truth. They settle at a corner table, the storyteller tuning his lute as the one-eyed man pulls out a battered pipe, lighting it with a slow, deliberate flare. The room quiets down, anticipation swirling in the smoky air. Everyone here loves a good story, whether it's true or not. The traveling storyteller clears his throat and begins, his voice low and melodic, weaving a tale of distant kingdoms, brave knights, and enchanted forests where trees whisper secrets and rivers run with silver fish. His words paint vivid pictures in the minds of his listeners. You find yourself drawn in, imagining the golden castles under sapphire skies and the daring quests that test a hero's courage and honor. Every now and then, his fingers dance across the lute strings, adding haunting melodies that pull at your heart. But then the one-eyed liar chuckles, cutting in with his own story. It's louder, rougher, and far less believable. A wild yarn about a sea serpent that swallowed an entire fishing boat, about a blacksmith who forged a sword that could cut through stone, and a talking goat that once saved a village from invading barbarians. His voice rises, punctuated by exaggerated gestures and knowing winks. Some of the villagers snort with laughter, others lean closer, eager to catch every outrageous detail. You can't help but wonder how much of it is true, if any at all. The storyteller and the liar spar verbally, each trying to outdo the other with tales more fantastic than the last. Their audience is captivated, caught in the spell of the contest. Between sips of ale, you watch the interplay, the subtle glances, the sly smiles, the occasional raised eyebrow, as both men test the boundaries of truth and fiction. The tavern becomes a stage where stories come alive, shaping the night's mood and filling the room with laughter, awe, and occasional groans at the more ridiculous claims. But beneath the humor and bravado lies a deeper truth. These tales, true or false, serve a purpose. They bind the villagers together, offering escape from daily hardships and a shared experience that is both entertaining and comforting. In the flickering firelight, amid the haze of smoke and the hum of conversation, the stories become part of the tavern's living history, a patchwork of myth and memory that shapes the identity of everyone present. As the night deepens, the storyteller strums a gentle tune, and even the one-eyed liar nods in quiet approval, the rivalry softened by the magic of storytelling. You lean back, feeling the warm buzz of ale and camaraderie, knowing that tomorrow, these stories will ripple through the village, told and retold with new twists and flourishes. You realize that in this tavern, stories, whether fact or fiction, are just as important as the ale, the fire, and the raucous laughter. They are the threads that weave the community's spirit, keeping it alive through long nights and cold winters. Taxes, tithes, and bribes, how taverns stayed open. You might imagine that running a medieval tavern was simple. Brew some ale, serve hearty stew, and provide a warm hearth to weary travelers. But behind the warm glow of candlelight and the steady murmur of conversation lies a far more complicated and precarious business, one where money changes hands not only for goods but for survival itself. First, consider the cost of the raw materials: barley for ale, firewood to keep the hearth blazing through freezing nights, and fresh vegetables or salted meats for the ever-present stew pot. These staples alone demand constant attention, negotiation with farmers and merchants, and a careful eye on dwindling stocks. But the tavern's expenses stretch far beyond the kitchen and cellar. The lord of the manor, who owns the land and the tavern itself in many cases, imposes a series of taxes and levies designed to fill his coffers. Known by various names, Harriet tallage, or simply tax, these payments are often demanded in coin but sometimes paid in kind: barrels of ale, baskets of bread, or even a portion of the nightly takings. The Lord's tax collectors come regularly, their visits greeted with a mixture of grudging acceptance and thinly veiled anxiety. They are stern men, their leather boots thudding on the creaking floorboards, eyes sharp for any hint of deception. Avoiding or delaying payment risks brutal consequences, heavy fines, seizure of goods, or worse. But the Lord is not the only one expecting his due. The church, powerful and watchful, requires its tithe, usually a tenth of profits or produce, to sustain its many religious activities. The local priest, often a fixture in village life, sees the tavern both as a place of sin and community. On certain feast days, the innkeeper is expected to set aside generous offerings, extra barrels of ale for the clergy's celebration, or fresh loaves for the parish poor. The church's moral authority looms large, and the innkeeper must carefully navigate the tension between hosting raucous revelry and showing pious deference. Beyond these formal demands, the tavern keeper engages in a less official economy, the shadowy, often necessary realm of bribes and favors. Medieval society is a tangled web of patronage and influence, and the tavern's survival often depends on cultivating goodwill with powerful locals. The tax collector might accept a discreet gift, a fine bottle of mead or a handful of silver coins, to overlook minor infractions like an unlicensed dice game or an extra mug poured for favored patrons. The bailiff and constable, tasked with maintaining order, appreciate invitations to a private corner of the tavern, where drinks flow freely and the usual rowdiness is tempered for a night. The innkeeper becomes a master negotiator, balancing the official and unofficial costs with the daily realities of running a bustling establishment. She counts her coins carefully behind the counter, aware that every penny spent on taxes or bribes is one less for restocking barrels, paying staff, or repairing the worn roof. At times, the strain is immense. Should one of these payments be missed or mishandled, the consequences ripple quickly: a threatening visit from angry men-at-arms, a temporary closure, or the loss of license to brew ale. The tavern also plays a subtle role in village politics. By hosting the Lord's men with special treatment, the best ale and a warm fire, the innkeeper ensures their goodwill. When disputes flare, she may quietly warn certain patrons to leave before tensions escalate. In times of unrest, the tavern acts as a neutral ground where tempers cool, deals are struck, and alliances forged. Despite these pressures, the tavern remains a sanctuary. For villagers, it is more than just a place to drink. It is the social heart of the community, a refuge from the hardships of daily life. Weddings, celebrations, trade, gossip, all converge here, supported by the unspoken agreements and costly payments that keep the tavern's doors open. Next time you lift a mug in a medieval tavern, remember, the ale you taste and the warmth you feel come at a price far beyond the barley in your drink. Behind every hearty meal and every tankard raised is a story of taxes paid, bribes offered, and a delicate dance of power that keeps this vital place alive. A visit from the bishop, no ale today. The heavy wooden door of the tavern creaks open with unusual solemnity, and a hush falls over the once lively room. The usual murmur of laughter, the clinking of mugs, and the raucous songs from the minstrel's lute all disappear like smoke in the cold air. Everyone's eyes turn to the entrance, where a figure of unmistakable authority steps inside. The bishop himself, robed in fine, flowing garments, his presence commanding respect and a hint of fear. The innkeeper's usual confident smile fades, replaced by a tight-lipped nod as she quietly signals her staff. Tonight there will be no ale served, no dancing, no boisterous games. Instead, the tavern must transform into a place of quiet reverence, a makeshift chapel under the bishop's watchful gaze. The once warm hearth seems dimmer, and the familiar sense of roasting meats and spiced ale are replaced by the faint smell of burning incense, an unfamiliar fragrance in these rough wooden walls. The tables that usually groan under the weight of mugs and plates now hold only simple loaves of stale bread and cups of thin, bitter water. The patrons, rough hands suddenly folded in uneasy prayer, glance around, unsure how to behave without the usual distractions. The bishop's deep voice echoes softly through the room, calling for prayers and penance. He speaks of sin and salvation, reminding everyone that the tavern, often a den of drunkenness and disorder, must also be a place of repentance and humility. His words cut through the smoke and chatter like a sharp blade, demanding silence and respect. The minstrel sets his lute aside, bowing his head in quiet submission. Even the rowdiest of peasants stop their bickering, lowering their voices to whispers. The ale mug is carefully placed down, untouched, as if it were an altar chalice. Outside, the night air is crisp and still. Inside, the tavern feels suspended in time, caught between its usual riotous life and the solemn demands of the church. The flickering candlelight casts long shadows on the faces of those gathered, revealing both reverence and a restless longing for the merriment that has been paused. You sit quietly in a corner, feeling the strange mix of unease and calm. The bishop's visit is a reminder of the larger forces that govern this small world, forces of faith, power, and control that reach even into this humble tavern. For one night, the laughter and ale are put aside, replaced by whispered prayers and the quiet rustle of turning pages from a worn Bible. As the bishop leads the congregation in prayer, you realize how the tavern is more than just a place for drink and stories. It is a stage where the struggles between joy and duty, freedom and discipline, play out in vivid, human terms. When the service finally ends, the bishop's departure is met with a collective sigh, relief mixed with a hint of anticipation. Tomorrow, the tavern will roar back to life, with mugs raised and songs sung, but for tonight, it stands as a solemn reminder of faith's heavy hand on everyday life. The tavern as refuge, where you hide from the rain or the law. The sky outside has been darkening for hours, heavy clouds blotting out the last fading light. The sharp patter of rain begins softly at first, then turns into a steady, unrelenting downpour. You had intended to press on, just a quick drink, maybe a bite to eat, and then back to the muddy road. But then you spotted him. The sheriff, his black cloak slick with rain, trudging past the tavern's doorstep with purpose. His eyes swept the street like a hawk searching for prey. You know better than to be caught wandering alone in the village when the sheriff's around. A simple question could spiral into hours of interrogation, or worse, a night spent in the cold, damp jail cell. So you push open the heavy door, slipping inside before the rain can soak you through, and suddenly the tavern feels like a sanctuary. Inside, the tavern is warm and noisy, a stark contrast to the wet gloom outside. The thick stone walls hold the heat from the blazing fire, and the air smells of peat smoke, damp wood, and something tangy, the ever-present ale and mead. People talk in low voices, faces half-lit by flickering candlelight, but all eyes dart occasionally toward the door, wary of who else might come seeking shelter. You find a shadowed corner to settle into, peeling off your soaked cloak and wringing out your sleeves. The wooden bench beneath you creaks with age but feels sturdy enough. Around you, the murmur of whispered gossip blends with the soft clinking of mugs and the occasional barked order from the innkeeper, who is clearly well accustomed to unexpected visitors like yourself. You overhear talk of recent troubles, a theft at the market, a dispute between two farmers, rumors of bandits lurking in the nearby woods. The sheriff's presence is no accident. He's been patrolling harder these days, trying to keep a tighter grip on law and order. The village has its secrets, and the tavern is where those secrets linger, whispered quietly over another round of ale. Here, in the tavern's smoky haze, you are invisible, just another face in the crowd, blending into the rough-hewn wooden walls and thick woolen cloaks. The guards outside may pass by, but no one here will give you away. For a few hours you can hide from the rain, from prying eyes, from the unforgiving reach of the law. As the fire crackles and the rain drums steadily on the roof, you realize the tavern is more than just a place to drink. It is a refuge, a liminal space between danger and safety, freedom and capture, warmth and the cold uncertainty beyond the door. Tonight, it is your shelter, your shield, your temporary home. When the sheriff's boots finally fade down the street, and the rain slows to a gentle drizzle, you know you still have time. Time to rest, to listen, to gather your strength for whatever lies beyond the tavern's walls come morning. The final tankard, saying goodbye to the tavern life. The fire in the hearth flickers low, casting a warm amber glow over the worn wooden beams and faded tapestries. Around you, the tavern feels both familiar and bittersweet, every creak, every scent, every shadow a reminder of countless nights spent in this haven from the world. Tonight you're here for one last time. You lift your tankard slowly, the ale inside cloudy and rich with the taste of barley and a hint of something earthy, the unmistakable flavor of a medieval tavern's brew. One last drink to honor the nights of laughter, whispered secrets, raucous songs, and the strange kind of comfort found only within these walls. The warmth spreads through your chest, steady and soothing. Outside, the crooked wooden sign above the door swings gently in the evening breeze, its painted image faded by years of sun and rain. You glance up at it, feeling a strange tug at your heart. This sign, simple and weathered, has welcomed strangers, friends, wanderers, and wanderers no more. It has been a silent witness to lives intersecting, stories shared, and moments passed into memory. Tonight, the tavern feels like an old friend bidding you farewell. The hearth's last glowing embers seem to say goodbye in their own quiet way, and the familiar murmur of settling dust and fading footsteps whispers of endings and new beginnings. As you stand to leave, you pause one last time to take in the scene, the worn tables, the empty mugs, the echoes of laughter and music that still linger faintly in the air. This place, with all its smells, sounds, and stories, has been more than just a building. It has been a refuge, a stage, a sanctuary for the weary and the wild-hearted alike. You step outside, the night wrapping around you like a cloak, and with a soft smile, you turn away from the glowing window. The tavern's door swings shut behind you with a gentle thud, closing this chapter of your journey. Thank you so much for joining me on this slow, sleepy stroll through the smoky halls and creaking floors of the Medieval Tavern. I hope these quiet tales brought you calm, curiosity, and maybe even a little warmth as you drift off to sleep. If you enjoyed this series, don't forget to leave a comment, share your favorite part, and subscribe to the channel, Quiet Story, for many more relaxing histories and bedtime tales. Until next time, may your nights be peaceful, your dreams gentle, and your mornings bright. Good night.